everybody, this is Mike Van Meter, and this is Recovery is Possible. Thanks for joining me today, and this is where we discuss recovery options, recovery strategies, and everything that you need to know about getting sober in today's world. And it's becoming increasingly difficult, that's for sure, with legalization of marijuana all over the place and the fentanyl epidemic. And I tell you, I really do. It's my hope and prayer that something gets done dramatically with this fentanyl epidemic, because it's really, really out of control. And many of you may know, but if you don't, I'll inform you that fentanyl is the number one cause of death between the ages of 18 and 48 in the United States, and we have to do something about it. But today, what I want to talk about is the importance to listening to others that are in recovery if you want to get sober. And this is an important topic, and it's something that's been coming up quite a bit at work. Many of you may know that I work in a detox facility here in my area at a local hospital. And, you know, it seems like every week there's a certain theme that comes up that is on my mind, and I think about how we can fix whatever that problem is. And the theme this week is listening to others. We in the hospital and in treatment centers across the country, we have people that come in over and over and over as relapsers, and there's no judgment there. I mean, that was certainly the case for me when I first came into recovery, and that was the fact that I just was not able to get into sobriety. And that I think that most people face that situation. You know, it's actually rare that somebody comes into treatment for the first time and gets sober, gets into long-term sobriety. Is defined as over 5 years. That's the medical definition of long-term sobriety, is anything over 5 years. And that's kind of a rare thing for people to do. It's possible. People do it. And if you listen closely to what I'm saying and practice what I'm saying, that can be you as well. That was not me, but it can be you. You don't have to continue to suffer. You don't have to continue to create pain for yourself and everybody around you. You can get sober the first time. And so when I talk about today's subject, I'm not really even talking about other people. I'm talking about myself. But I did have a lot of patients this week that fit into the category that I'm going to talk about. And this is my what I'm imploring to you, if you are trying to get someone, or if you get sober, or if you know someone that's trying to get sober, so listen to this, and I really promise you that you will save yourself a lot of pain and pain for others if you heed these words. And that is, listen to others that are in long-term recovery. So let me kind of give an analogy here. If I was going to go out and do, let's say, something very, very difficult, maybe an ultra marathon, or I want to go to Navy SEAL training, or I want to go to special operations training, or I want to do an Ironman triathlon, something very profoundly difficult, right? And I was lucky enough to have someone that has done this, not only done these types of things, but was very good at it. Maybe even a champion, maybe somebody that's won the Ironman World Championships. Let's say they were my coach. But in the recovery world, let's say that this is our sponsor. So let's say that we have this person and we're lucky enough to have this type of individual in our lives give us advice, if that were to happen. And imagine, if you will, that this person is giving me advice on training, on diet, on sleep, on the hydration, all of the different things that go into doing something profoundly difficult, right? And let's say that this person gives me this advice, and I decide, well, I'm not going to do that. I have my own plan. I have my own ideas about nutrition. I have my own ideas about training. And I'm going to do that instead of what you just told me, even though you're the reigning world championship victor in Ironman triathlon. Now, if you were a bystander, you would look at me and you would say, "Are you crazy? This guy just gave you all of the information that you need to be successful." I mean, after all, this person probably knows what they're talking about if they're the world champion. And imagine, if you will, that you decide you're not going to take that information and you're going to go your own way. That would be insane. but yet we do that in recovery every single day. I cannot tell you how often I've had a patient come into the hospital or into the treatment center where I interned and was a resident. I cannot tell you how many patients came in and they were getting the pearls of wisdom from somebody that is in recovery, such as myself and others, the other counselors. And we would tell them what they needed to do to get sober. And their response was, well, here's what I like to do, or here's what works for me, or I don't like this program or that program, and I'm not going to do it, even though the program that they're talking about may be the most successful program out there known to mankind. And in that world, it's, in the sports world or the training world, or if you were trying to go into special operations, if you didn't follow someone's advice that had done this, that would be considered insane. But in the recovery world, that's considered normal. And we see it every single day, despite the fact that some of the patients that we're talking to have been to treatment not just a few times, but in some cases 30 plus times, and still not taking the advice of the counselors that are there to provide them the information. Now, what this does is it highlights that addiction is a disease of the mind and the body. And it's a disease as much of the mind as it is a disease of the body, mind and body. And when you first come into recovery, i.e. detox or a 28-day treatment facility, what you're doing there is you're detoxing the body. You have to get whatever brought you in, whether it's alcohol, cocaine, heroin, fentanyl, whatever it is, you have to get that out of your body. And that's the detox part of it. And that's important. And then you start the process of healing the neural pathways in your brain, getting the vitamin B series 1, 3, 6, 12, getting all that back up, GABA levels up, serotonin levels up, melatonin levels up, all these things up. These are things that are depleted in your body when you're drinking. And if you're talking alcohol, none of these things are even absorbed in your body, even if you're taking vitamins. And we have to restore that. And that can take up to 1.5 years, actually. It does not happen overnight. And so for those of you that are in early sobriety, and maybe even in detox, and you've only been in detox for a few days, and you know how much better you feel after a few days, imagine what 1 year is like, 2 years, 10 years. Imagine what that's like if you feel that much better after 3 days. Okay? But the fog starts to lift. The ability to think more clearly comes back. Being able to reason comes back. Because really when you think of what you're doing to your body with drugs and alcohol, you're destroying the ability to make rational decisions. That prefrontal cortex part of your brain is not functioning properly. Particularly you're not getting vitamins B1 and 3, which have to do with neurological functioning, have been depleted. So you're not thinking clearly. And then later, when you get into deep recovery, you'll look back and you'll go, what the heck was I doing? What was I thinking? Well, you weren't really thinking, and you weren't thinking clearly. But the problem with early recovery is that because people feel so uncomfortable and they still have that detox going on, and they're suffering from post-acute withdrawal syndrome, because you're still going through that and you have those emotional highs and lows and you feel uncomfortable, then you go back to what makes you comfortable, and that's drugs and alcohol again. So the hard part in early recovery is just pushing through that window, pushing through it, and just getting somehow through hook or crook, getting yourself through that first 1.5 years of sobriety. And then I promise you, it becomes easier after that. And then the problem then is because it's easy and you don't feel as uncomfortable as you did previously, that's a danger in and of itself, because then you start to think that you're not an addict and you can go back and use the way that you were. You can't, because your disease is still there. In fact, your disease progresses over a period of time, whether you use or not. And that's one of the phenomena of addiction that most people don't understand. I think even people in recovery don't completely understand that your disease gets worse over a period of time, whether you use or not. And it always gets worse. It never gets better. There are no exceptions to that. And you will not be the first exception to what I just said. And anybody that's relapsed can confirm what I just told you to be true. And there's a lot of science behind that as well. But that's another subject for another day. But back to our point at hand. And our point at hand here is that, If you want to get well, and I want to emphasize that point. You must first decide that you want to get well. Because if you don't want to get well, then there's really nothing that I or anyone else can do for you. Okay? You got to make that decision. You have to, in your soul, say to yourself, I want to get sober, and I want to get sober more than anything else on planet Earth. That's got to be your number one priority. You do not have a number one priority that is greater than getting sober. Now, you might say, no, it's my children. Actually, it's not. It's actually not your children. Because if you continue to drink, drug, or use, you're not going to have children. You're not going to have to worry about it. It's not your job. You're going to lose your job. It's not going to be your friends and family because you're going to lose them if you don't get sober. You're not. And if you're using fentanyl, that's going to happen very quickly, actually. Very quickly. Because I'm going to tell you something. I have not met one fentanyl patient, not one, that has come into our hospital, a person that's using fentanyl that is in school or working. Not one. Not one. Once you start using fentanyl, you drop out of life and you drop out of your family. So the point being is that you do not have a higher priority than getting sober. That has to be number one, period. Now, the next thing that you need to do is you need to listen to those that know what they're talking about. Now, for my friends that come into treatment, and you come into the education groups, and you're listening to the counselors and the therapists and the doctors and the nurses tell you the types of things that I'm telling you right now, and they're talking about the disease of addiction, and they're talking about the progression, and they're talking about what it takes to get sober, and you listen to them, and you're being given pearls of wisdom, but you go out into the treatment facility, into the TV room or wherever you're going, and then you listen to your buddy who's also in detox and treatment with you, but yet you listen to their advice as opposed to the advice of the therapists and the doctors and the nurses. You are setting yourself up for failure. You're going to set yourself up for disaster. Now, for those of you that aren't in recovery or desiring to be in recovery, what I just said to you sounds pretty obvious, and you think, well, who in the heck would do that? Well, I'll tell you who the heck would do that. That is patients that come in, and this happens every single day. I can hear patients talking in the hallways. I can hear them comparing notes with other patients who are also in the same treatment center that they're in, and they will more than likely take the advice of other patients in treatment as opposed to the professionals or the people that come in that have long-term sobriety, and they talk about how to get sober. That's the disease. That's the disease. You know why? Because the person in treatment with you is likely trying to find reasons to use again. They've not made that all-important decision to get sober by any means necessary. They probably have not done that. What they're actually trying to do is find ways to use without having the consequences of using. That's really what it comes down to, is that most people that come to treatment have not made the decision to get well. They've made the decision to continue using without having the consequences that brought them into treatment in the first place. And there's a dramatic difference between those two things. You have to get it burned into your brain that by the time you come to treatment, by the time you grace your first AA meeting, NA meeting, or any other 12-step meeting, or you've gone to treatment, by the time that has happened, your days of ever being able to use safely again are over. You have to understand that. That must be tattooed onto your brain. Your days of using safely are over. And that's okay, because it's not like your life is over. Actually, what you're going to find is that this is the beginning of your life. It is not the end of your life. It is the beginning of your life. Many people will say that. That's why in a lot of recovery programs, you will find that some people in recovery have two birthdays. They have the day when they came out of their mother's womb, and then they have the day that they got sober. And that was the real beginning of their life. Because in the AA literature, it mentions in there that at a certain point, you will find that there's a fourth dimension to your life that you were propelled into, you didn't even know existed. And so your life is going to get better. It's not going to get 100% better. It'll get 1,000% better. It will get much better than you even thought it would get. And I promise you that if you stop using. But having said that, the important thing for you to do is when you first come into recovery, particularly that first year, which is crucial. The first month is crucial, but that first year is also crucial, okay? And in that first year, my advice to anyone that wants to get into long-term sobriety is you have to find someone in your life that has accomplished long-term sobriety. Again, defined as 5 years or more. Now, I know some of you might say, well, what about 2 years? What about 1 year? I know I go at AA meetings, and at AA meetings, they tell me I can start having a service position after a year. That's you got to remember, that's in AA, and that's their criteria for you of being able to establish reliability to be able to come in and hold those service positions. And that's fine. What they're trying to get is just a track record that you will be showing up when you say you're going to show up. That's not the medical definition of long-term sobriety. Now, the reason why I say 5 years is because at 5 years, one, that's the medical definition, but two, you have somebody that has developed a track record of not just showing up, being there in recovery and not drinking or drugging, but after about 5 years, there's a little bit of life that has happened in there. And in that 5 years, your sobriety has probably been tested a little bit with angry bosses. Maybe you've lost a job. Maybe you've lost a spouse. Maybe you've experienced a death in your family. Maybe you've gone through a serious health condition, but didn't drink or drug through all of this. And that's important because we do want to get from that period where we're just not using, but not using and going through trials at the same time. Because as many of you know, it's resentments that cause you to go back out. It's life stressors that cause you to go back out and use that drink or drug again. And we want somebody that's been tried and tested and still remain sober, because that person is going to be able to impart on you wisdom. They're going to be able to impart on you tools, strategies, talk about the things that they did to be able to get through those hard times without picking up a drink or a drug. Now, it's important that you not only have that person in your life, but that person, when they give you advice, that you actually take it and you heed it almost blindly. Because remember, when you are in early sobriety, you are not thinking clearly. You are not rational. And when this person tells you, here's what I do when this happens in my life, you may look at that, if you're in early recovery, as, well, that's not how I always do things. When those types of things happen in my life, here's how I handle it. But that's the problem. You have always been handling it the wrong way. We are trying to get to the right way of handling these things. And so my advice to you, and it's advice that was given to me and I practiced in early recovery, and that is, no matter how silly it sounded, I was just going to blindly follow what this person told me to do. And because I know this, my thinking was wrong in the beginning, and this person's thinking was right. And you may not even see that at the time, but years later, you will look back and you will see the wisdom in that. And because I will tell you that even recently, I've had people call me in the middle of the night and ask for advice. And I've given them advice, and then they turn around and do the exact opposite of what I suggested that they do, and bad things happen. And then when I talk to them after that and they say, well, the other night this bad thing happened, I'm like, well, yeah, that's the exact opposite of what I told you to do. And their response is usually, yeah, you're right, I should have listened to you. Well, you know what? One of the things that we can do if you just decide to follow other people's advice, that, let me clarify again, to somebody that has demonstrated that they can get long-term sobriety, you will not have to apologize as much. You will not have to look back with regret. And you will find that the advice that they gave you was likely very solid. But key takeaways here. 1, you must make the decision that you want to get sober more than anything else on planet Earth, period. Okay? And 2, you need to find someone that has demonstrated long-term sobriety, as defined as 5 years or more. And 3, you must listen and act upon what they tell you. If you do that, I promise you, your life will go much smoother in early recovery than if you don't. And how do I know that? Because I didn't do much of that. But when I finally did get into long-term sobriety, I was practicing exactly what I just explained to you. And so that's just kind of a quick thought for today. And guys, I'm praying for all of you. I really am. And if you're listening to this podcast, you probably are looking at wanting to get sober, or you have someone in your life that you want to get sober. And, I'm praying for you. I really am. And I think about all of you all of the time. And that's why we're here. That's why we're doing what we're doing. This is service work. And folks, you take care of yourselves, and I will see you very, very soon. So take care. This recovery is possible. I'm Mike Van Meter, and I look forward to talking with all of you in person at some point. I go around the country and talk about recovery. I'd love to talk with you. And take care.